Mic check 1 2 1 2. Mic check 1 2 1 2. If anyone can hear me in the chat, just push one. As soon as I get a confirmation, we can go ahead and get started. All right, we got some ones up in here. Thanks for the confirmation, Excalibur. Good evening to you, Reigning Woman. All right, welcome back to the Black Brain Trust. This is episode 288, Economics. Please hit the like button as you come in. Share the video if possible. Hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust, including those on the community tab that we've been posting. We will get started in the next 90 seconds. If you want to join the panel, when you join the panel, make sure you raise your hand so that I can acknowledge you and promote you to the panel. If you're not going to participate in the chat, just please hit the like button as you come in. It's fine that you're going to just listen and not actually partake. We're okay with that. All right, we're going to get started. The True Light, you emailed us. What did you email us about? I don't think I got that email. Maybe you might have emailed the wrong domain or something. I don't know. I haven't received anything. We can talk after the hangout. Actually, we're gonna have a hangout tomorrow on Black Tech Talk on IT and mentorship. So I'll be doing that tomorrow night or tomorrow afternoon, and then we can go from there. All right, let me get cracking, man, because I'm already late. All right, so first item on the docket is from CNBC.com. Home Depot says suppliers are moving manufacturing out of China to avoid tariffs. Home Depot suppliers are trying to head off some of the increased costs from rising tariffs by moving at least some of their production out of China, executives told investors Tuesday. I'm not aware of a single supplier who was not moving some form of manufacturing outside of China, said Ted Decker, executive vice president of merchandise. So we have suppliers moving production to Taiwan, to Vietnam, to Thailand, Indonesia, and even back to the United States. CEO Craig Menier said the tariffs on the Chinese goods are projected to have a cost impact on US sales of about 2% or $2 billion. With suppliers moving at least some of their manufacturing outside of China, that reduces that impact by roughly 1 percentage point, executive said. Zachary Feldman, an analyst at Wells Fargo, said the cost impact refers to what the company pays for the merchandise it sells. The company will have to price in a roughly 2% increase in cost of sales to account for the tariffs without the actions suppliers are taking to mitigate that damage. Home Depot had also lowered its sales outlook for the year to be up about 2.3% and same store sales to increase by about 4%. Previously, it had called for total sales growth of 3.3% and same store sales growth of 5%. Feldman said that the company mentioned the forecast was conservative because of its uncertainty over how the tariffs will impact consumers. Home Depot stock rose more than 4.5% Tuesday after the company reported better than expected profits, despite cutting its forecast for the year on lumber prices and potentially weaker consumer demand due to tariffs. Decker also said the company can calculate precisely how tariffs will impact every product in its inventory. We have the data of country of origin and potential tariff impact literally down to the SKU. So we know exactly what are on the various lists when the tariffs impact will hit, he said. Retailers have been trying to avoid passing the cost of the tariffs down to consumers by diversifying their supply chains to countries outside of China. JP Morgan estimated the tariffs that will take effect September 1st will cost the average American about $1,000 a year. So it's interesting that this article was on the docket because I just came back from Home Depot as well. This is serious. This is serious because Home Depot sells home staples. Home staples, and in fact, that for building materials and the housing sector and the renovation sector. So if you have people who are trying to build, companies trying to build new residential housing and commercial building, and they get their supplies from Home Depot, Lowe's as well. Lowe's is actually included in this as well, but they don't mention in the article. What's going to happen here is that they may determine how many hours it's going to cost them labor-wise to actually build something by taking the material costs into perspective as well, because if material costs rise, then labor costs will also have a perpetual scale with it too. Because now, what it would have cost, 2% before, well, guess what? That labor is also going to increase too. So what I'm saying here is that Home Depot has to diversify its manufacturing to different countries of origin, because if it keeps increasing, then they can't go back to the same source. I mean, they apparently noticed all the way down to the SKU number that they can figure out what it's going to cost them if tariffs do hit. But what happens when your your staff in your stores are still on the clock? Well, you can't you can't not bundle the cost of tariffs in with the cost of the goods. This may drive up some competition, it may not. The way how I see it is that everybody's going to be impacted by these tariffs. Everybody, all the way down to imported chocolates. All that stuff is going to be impacted, because it's not just China they're going after. They're going after Mexico. They're going after other neighboring countries like Canada. I think they worked out a deal already a few months ago with them. The Europeans, they're going after them. I mean, this is a global thing for the United States. Let me get to the next article. All right, this one is from CNBC.com again. Target CEO, this U.S. trade war creates uncertainty and complexity. The festering U.S.-China trade war creates problems for retailers like Target, CEO Brian Cornell said Wednesday. As long as the trade situation remains fluid, it will present an additional layer of uncertainty and complexity as we plan our business. Cornell told analysts on a conference call following the company's second quarter earnings report. President Donald Trump said last week he was holding off on imposing 10% tariffs on certain Chinese-made goods until December 15th. The levies supposed to begin September 1st. The U.S. Trade Representative Office said the delay is for electronics, including cell phones, laptops, and video game consoles, and some types of clothing, shoes, and certain toys. We're doing this for the Christmas season, Trump said. Cornell said Target is encouraged by the delay. He said the company benefits from its diverse multi-category assortment, deep expertise in global sourcing, and a sophisticated set of manufacturing partners around the world. As a result, we are confident in our ability to navigate this period of heightened volatility and move our business forward, he said. Everybody's going to be affected by this. I just said this earlier. Everybody's going to be affected by this. There are no draws or something to that effect. Like people are not going to walk away unscathed. All of this will be passed down to the consumer. You're going to pay for this. So if your flat screen TVs go up, if the flat screen TVs go up in tariffs, then that's going to be passed on to the consumer. Now, I'll tell you one thing is that if this continues, then what's going to happen here is that China may very well ship a lot of these goods of manufacturing to the continent of Africa. Now, here's why I say this. Africa, the western part of Africa and the United States is only a few hours apart in terms of flying. And to ship goods across the water would probably decrease the time of travel from 2 weeks probably down to 3 days, if not shorter than that. You can probably ship in just about 24 hours, even by ship. So your West African countries would benefit greatly from this because all they got to do is just stamp the label of origin, made in Ghana, made in Nigeria, made in Burkina Faso, made in et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The whole West African corridor. China gets, a 40% cut. Africa gets a 60% cut. African businesses grow, or the African economic corridor grows. Everybody's happy. Trump walks away unscathed, and China benefits because the goods are manufactured and they get shipped, and they still get some kind of profit off it. Not 100%, but they still get something. Hey, what's going on, Neon Eyes? So yeah, this is what's going on, and a lot of people are not taking this into consideration that everybody is going to be hit by this. Fortunately for me, most of my goods are not made in China at all, so I don't have much to worry about. A lot of them just made in the United States. All right, let me get to the next article. All right, this next one's from the businessinsider.com. Trump says it doesn't matter if the United States has a recession because the trade war is more important. President Donald Trump on Tuesday described the prospect of the U.S. falling into recession as irrelevant and defended his decision to wage a trade war with China. During a White House visit by Romanian President Klaus Iohannis, Trump was asked about concerns that his trade war with China was dragging down the U.S. economy. Somebody had to take on China, Trump replied, and it's about time, whether it's good for our country or bad for our country short term. Long term, it's imperative that somebody does this because our country cannot continue to pay China $500 billion because stupid people are running it. I don't mind this question. Whether it's good or bad, the short term is irrelevant. We have to solve the problem with China because they are taking about $500 billion a year plus. And that doesn't include intellectual property theft or other things. Reframing the report as question, he continued, and also national security. So I am doing this whether it's good or bad for your statement about, okay, will we fall into recession for 2 months? The fact is, no, somebody had to take on China. My life would be a lot easier if I didn't take China on, but I like doing it because I have to do it. The president apparent, the president's the president's apparent acceptance that his policies could cause the U.S. economic pain marks a sharp departure from his remarks in recent days, in which he has boasted of the strength of the U.S. economy and accused the media and political opponents of skewing economic data as precipitating a recession to help torpedo his chances of re-election in 2020. Trump's remarks were echoed by his acting chief of staff, Mick Mulvaney, in remarks to GOP donors at an event in Washington on Tuesday. Mulvaney said that if the U.S. were to face a recession, it would be moderate and short, Politico reported. White House officials had previously insisted that perceived recession indicators were being exaggerated and that the prospects for the economy remain good. On Tuesday, Trump said that he did not think a recession was on. It's way, but sorry, I had something on my screen. Recession was on its way, but acknowledged that payroll tax cuts were among measures being considered should the U.S. economic situation worsen. We're very far from a recession, Trump said. In fact, if the Fed would do its job, I think we would have a tremendous spurt of growth, a tremendous spurt. So, very weird response to the question because um, he says, you know, he says, I'm doing this whether it's good or bad for your statement about, okay, will we fall into recession for 2 months? And then he says, my life would be a lot easier if I didn't take on China, but I like doing it because I have to do it. That's a very, cryptic and weird statement. Um, I like doing it because I have to do it. Some people don't like eating Brussels sprouts, but I like doing it because I have to do it. I mean, just think about that statement. Um, but I guess when you're a tangerine tyrant, you can just say whatever you want and do whatever do whatever you please, and just feed the media whatever it is you think they're going to accept. It's a very weird and cryptic statement. And it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but this is what we're dealing with here. You know, all right, let me get to the next article. All right, this one is from UPI.com. Derogatory student loan debt is growing at stunning pace, Fed report says. The amount, the total amount of household debt in the United States has growth for the 20th consecutive quarter, and student loans have become the most prevalent type of severely derogatory debt, new statistics show. The Federal Reserve Bank of New York said in its quarterly report, household debt climbed by nearly $200 billion in the second quarter to nearly $14 trillion. Not only has the rising student debt become the most defaulted, the New York Fed classified the spike over the last few years as stunning. The outstanding severely derogatory balance is comprised of 35% defaulted student loans, which have grown stunningly since 2012, the report states. The New York Fed defines severely derogatory as any kind of delinquent loan, along with repossession, foreclosure, or charge off, meaning the lender has removed a debt from its books. The report also found that student loan delinquency rates increased by 10% for the period between April and July, transitioning at high levels to relative types of debt. Ashley Harrington, a senior policy counsel at the Center for Responsible Lending, says one reason for the high rate of derogatory student debt is that 90% of the outstanding loans in are federal loans, which take longer to default. For federal loans, you are not defaulting until 270 days delinquent. And even then, it takes a bit longer to show up on your credit report, she said. Whereas we know very soon when someone is struggling with payments on their credit cards or their cars or their houses. It takes much longer for us to really register the extent of the issue with student debt. Total outstanding student debt for the quarter is just under $1.5 trillion, a slight decline from the first quarter. But the report said the number of households unable to repay them has increased significantly. Student loan debt is the second highest household debt behind only mortgage debt. Harrington also said that the Pell Grant has failed to keep up with the cost of modern colleges, and the federal government has failed to properly regulate for-profit colleges, which offer very specific degrees for high tuition costs. If you have a lot of student debt and a worthless degree, then then the chances you are able to pay back that loan are very low, she said. Harrington said the Center for Responsible Lending advocates abolishing defaults on loans, should say loans, at the federal level and establishing some level of cross the broad loan forgiveness for student loans. Even a $10,000 across the board loan forgiveness program would significantly help many borrowers because most of the borrowers are in default for amounts are that are less than $10,000, she said. Rising student debt is already a significant topic among Democratic presidential candidates, as many have pitched plans for total loan forgiveness and free college tuition. Such programs would clearly have a substantial impact on the student debt landscape, but probably not for a number of years. Presidential candidates Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren have promised both, and John Delaney has proposed free tuition in exchange for a year of national service. The report by the New York Fed has also listed auto and credit card loans as becoming more delinquent among household debts. So I thought this was interesting because what they're saying is that these student loans are toxic. They're toxic. And they really don't have a mechanism in place to actually address the student loans in a way that would be fundamentally um, sufficient for the debtor or for the person who's in debt. And my thing is, they bailed out the banks 10 years ago. They send money to a certain Middle Eastern country that doesn't have a return on investment for us. We we being a country should have to figure out why we're still um, we're still creating Pell Grants for these for-profit colleges, as well as not putting regulatory measures and mechanisms in place to stop these for-profit institutions from getting federal student loans. Why are they able to acquire these loans and then force a person who may not even find a job in the next 2 years to pay off something that they can't afford? Doesn't make any sense. I mean, people say all the time, well, you should know what you're getting yourself into, but that's BS. In this country, you need some form of degree to work, at least at the high level. You can't earn a living now without some form of undergraduate degree. And even the ones who do have undergraduate degrees, some of them are working at Walmart and Kmart and Target. You want them to pay off their loans with that sort of income? I don't think so. People are spending over 33% of their take-home pay on student loans. How is that helping the economy? How is that boosting local economy and the national economy? How does paying $10,000, $20,000 in student loan debt for a worthless degree benefiting the economy? Who benefits from this anyways? Okay, so you paid your student loans off. You paid off your federal loans. Does that somehow increase the Fed ratings? Do they go from a double A to a triple A rating now? Like there's so many areas where there's more to lose than there is to gain by not putting mechanisms in place. And meanwhile, these institutions are buying up property in certain black and brown neighborhoods for those who do operate in urban centers, and they're gentrifying these places, and they're not being taken to task for this. This is getting out of hand. Let me get to the next article. I think the way how you can fix something like this, man, is that one, state colleges and community colleges should be free. There's no reason why state and local taxes that pay for these institutions should somehow charge people back money that they invested into. I mean, it'll be the equivalent of charging somebody for getting a library card. I mean, it's supposed to be available to the public. It's a public service. Why are we charging for state and community colleges? Make everybody take an exam. If they get a 88 on the 88 percentage on the exam, then it's free. But just sending people to college just to send them to college doesn't make a whole lot of sense. That's a waste of federal dollars that should not be even doled out, and it's a waste of tuition from the student himself, because or the person himself, because they should have access to that education because they are citizens of that state or they're residents of that state. Why are they paying money to go to a college that should be free for them? Not everybody's going to get into it, which is why you have those entrance exams. You get an 87 or 88% on it, and then that will determine the number of bodies available for the enrollment. All right, let me get to this next article real quick. All right, this one is from CNBC.com again. Zoom's founder left a six-figure job because he wasn't happy, and following his heart made him a billionaire. Zoom CEO Eric Yuan dreamed of leaving China to go to Silicon Valley ever since he was a young man and heard Microsoft co-founder Bill Gates give a speech on the promise of the internet. Yuan spent over 2 years struggling with visa issues. He was rejected 8 times in total, finally receiving a U.S. visa on his 9th try, before finally coming to the U.S. in 1997. At age 27, he didn't speak English, but he knew how to write computer code, and he landed an engineering job with the video conferencing software company WebEx. WebEx sold to Cisco for $3.2 billion a decade later. The platform is now known as Cisco WebEx. Yuan became the tech giant's vice president of engineering, earning compensation in the very high six figures, but he was unhappy. Every day when I woke up, I was not very happy. I even did not want to go to the office to work. Yuan tells CNBC Make It. Though his first couple of years at Cisco had been great, he started noticing that when he talked to Cisco's WebEx customers about the video conferencing product he'd helped build, he did not see a single happy customer in Yuan's opinion. The product didn't evolve quickly enough, making it a chore for customers to use. In fact, Yuan told CNBC earlier this year that Cisco was still using the same buggy code he wrote for WebEx roughly 2 decades ago. Srinivasan, Senior Vice President and General Manager of Cisco's Team Collaboration Group, says the company has redesigned WebEx from the ground up since Yuan's tenure, and points out that WebEx clients include roughly 95% of the companies in the Fortune 500, and more than 130 million people use WebEx every month. As a longtime software engineer with multiple patents related to real-time collaboration technology under his belt, Yuan felt that the evolution of smartphones and tablets created new opportunities for making mobile video conferencing more accessible than ever. But by 2011, Yuan realized that if he wanted to make a product the way he wanted to do it, he'd have to leave that comfort leave the comfort of his high-paying executive job to strike out on his own. He left Cisco and began developing his own video conferencing software platform while looking for the funding he needed to build a product and launch a new company. On the one hand, that's indeed a big risk to go from a well-paid and vice president position. Why would you want to leave? You want to tell CNBC make it. However, on the flip side, I was not happy. So mentally, that's not a big risk. The purpose of life is to pursue happiness, and I was not happy. Then what's the risk? The gamble paid off, and then some. In the 8 years since Yuan founded Zoom, the company has grown to now employ more than 1,700 people while doubling its revenue in 2018 to more than $330 million. Zoom launched its initial public offering in April in what became one of the year's most successful public debuts. The company stock has jumped by more than 50% since the IPO, giving Zoom a market valuation of roughly $25.5 billion. However, some Wall Street analysts have argued that Zoom stock is overvalued compared to the company's current revenue. Meanwhile, Yuan has a 22% stake in his company that's now worth roughly $5.6 billion. When Yuan founded San Jose-based Zoom, the video conferencing market was fairly crowded, dominated by tech giants like Cisco, Google, and Skype, which sold to Microsoft for $8.5 billion in 2011. That made it difficult for Yuan to convince venture capital firms to back his new venture, but he was able to win the support of friends and angel investors like Dan Shineman, a fellow former Cisco executive who believed in Yuan's new project enough to cut him a $250,000 check. He's now a Zoom board member whose stake in the company was worth nearly $176.5 million after Zoom's IPO in April. Eventually, Yuan raised $3 million in seed funding from the likes of WebEx founder Subralia, now a Zoom advisor, and the venture capital firm TSVC. After developing a beta version of Yuan's video conferencing software and testing it, with tech company clients around Silicon Valley, Zoom launched its first official product in 2013. It quickly became popular with business clients, with over 3,500 businesses using Zoom within 5 months of its launch. 2 years later, that number had quickly grown to roughly 65,000 companies, with over 40 million individual participants using Zoom's video conferencing software. Part of the reason for that rapid adoption, Zoom offered a free product that people could use to stream video calls on their mobile devices or sync with traditional conferencing equipment in an office space. Zoom still offers its basic services for free, but business clients can pay for monthly subscriptions to get more features and allow more participants to use the software. Much of Zoom's early growth was organic. Its entire marketing strategy at that time relied on word of mouth promotion, according to Yuan. We didn't even make a marketing team until 2015, he says. Meanwhile, Yuan himself was even diving into customer service in some cases by personally responding over email to customers thinking about leaving the product. Whenever I saw someone canceled, I would reply over email to them to try and understand what had happened, says Yuan, who add that he learned a lot from this practice and that some of the clients he corresponded with even went on to become loyal longtime customers. While Zoom is an upswing since its successful IPO earlier this year, the company path has not been completely free of obstacles, evidenced by the brief backlash Zoom saw in July after a flaw in the company's meeting app became public. Researchers found a security bug in the app that would have allowed hackers to gain access to Zoom's video chat sessions taking place on a Mac computer, which tapped into the public fears of regarding cybersecurity and privacy in the tech space. Though Zoom quickly fixed the issue with a minor security patch, Yuan tells CNBC make it in the incident taught him a lesson about how important it is as a tech leader to quickly gather the facts and take action in any situation involving a potential security vulnerability. any security issue you have to be very hands-on, really, to understand what's the exact problem, and then take quick action, he says. Though Zoom has already seen a rapid ascent in the video conferencing market and continues to face tough competition from larger rivals like Cisco to Google and Microsoft, Yuan believes there's still plenty of room for the company to grow. In fact, he thinks Zoom can one day reach over 1 billion individual users. There are over 1 billion workers outside, he says to CNBC Make It. Our goal is to connect all those 1 billion knowledge workers with the Zoom platform. So given where we are now, I would think we literally just started. This came into my inbox, or into my feed. I thought it was interesting because we use Zoom to do these hangouts. And I believe it was somebody on the panel the other day said we should probably start investing into Zoom stock. And, I had to really think about that because they just filed for the IPO. So they're doing fairly well. But his story is something that I think we should be admired, because this is something that I think a lot of Black people are skeptic about getting into the market because, of failure. But this is somebody who barely spoke English, jumped into the market on their own and didn't have any issue. Didn't have any issue. He wasn't even happy with his 6-figure job. I think a lot of people go to work every day and they're not happy with their minimum wage job. So you imagine the gumption it took to actually quit your 6-figure job to go pursue a crowded market in the tech space. That takes a lot of kahunas to actually do something like that. It was going on Art Neutral TV. So I read the article so that people can understand what it really takes to really go at it in the startup space and in the tech world. And not just in the tech world, but in the individual business practice, because if you want something done, you got to do it yourself. And that's what Yuan did. He had to go out and write his own code. He was replying to emails to customers. This is a person who's building a company that walked away from a 6-figure job and is wearing multiple hats just to get things off the ground. Didn't even have a marketing team until 2 years later. And now they have well over 100,000 subscribers. I foresee that Zoom is going to take off even further. They may end up eating up a lot of market share, away from YouTube. If they can figure out the social media aspect, they could very well put themselves in a position to compete with YouTube, because the platform is that stable. It works fairly well on Windows and Mac. On Chrome, it's a little bit to be desired, but that's not to say that things can't change. I know on Android it's fairly good. On iOS it's fairly good too. So let me get to the next article. We got 30 people watching and only 25 likes. Please hit the like button if you're not going to participate. All right, this one is from Bloomberg.com. China hits back at Trump with higher tariffs on soys and auto. So I'm not sure what's going on with this. right, let me share my screen again. Terms of trade is daily. All right, let me get to the article. China threatened to impose additional tariffs on $75 billion of American goods, including soybeans, automobiles, and oil, in retaliation for President Donald Trump's latest planned levies on Chinese imports that pushed U.S. stocks and farm commodities lower. Some of the countermeasures will take effect starting September 1st, while the rest will come into effect from December 15th, according to the announcement Friday from the Finance Ministry. This mirrors the timetable the U.S. had laid out for 10% tariffs on nearly $300 billion worth of Chinese shipments. An extra 5% be put on American soybeans and crude oil imports starting next month. The resumption of a suspended extra 25% duty on U.S. cars will resume on December 15th, with another 10% on top for some vehicles. With existing general duties on autos taken into account, the total tariff charge on U.S. made cars would be as high as 50%. China's tariff threat take aim at the heart of Trump's political support. Factories and farms across the Midwest and South, at a time when the U.S. economy is showing signs of slowing down, soybean prices sank to a 2-week low. The move drew a sharp reaction from Trump that sent stocks tumbling further on concern the talks are falling apart. We don't need China, and frankly, would be far better off without them, he tweeted. Our great American companies are hereby ordered to immediately start looking for alternatives to China, including bringing your companies home and making your products in the USA. Among automakers, Tesla Incorporated and Germany's Daimler AG and BMW AG are most vulnerable to the additional levies. Shares of the two German companies fell more than 2% in Frankfurt, while Tesla dropped 2.2% in New York. BMW and Daimler shipped large numbers of sport utility vehicles from plants in South Carolina and Alabama to China, while Tesla doesn't yet make its electric cars in the country. 6 of the top 10 vehicles exported from the US to the world's biggest car market are from the two German brands, according to forecaster LMC Automotive. The US stocks drop along with treasury yields and oil prices. Emerging market currencies also declined, while havens such as the yen and the gold gained. The tariffs beginning in September include 10% on pork, beef, and chicken, and various other agricultural goods, while soybeans will have the extra 5% tariff on top of the existing 25%. Damn. Starting in December, wheat, sorghum, and cotton will also get a 10% tariff. So we can look at these we can look at this chart right here and see the amount of vehicles based on what's being sold in China. So the BMW X5 is an SUV. Mercedes-Benz GLE is another crossover vehicle. The GLS is another SUV. Lincoln MKC is another SUV, or crossover, I should say. Sorry. Ford Explorer is another truck. The BMW X4 is a crossover vehicle. Tesla Model X is a crossover vehicle. It's the one with the gull wing doors, or the Falcon doors that go up vertically. The BMW X3, another crossover vehicle. Jeep Grand Cherokee is another 4x4 SUV. BMW X6 is another crossover vehicle. So the most highest selling vehicles that these American manufactured products that are sold around the world, including China, happen to be SUVs, which prints money for most of these companies. SUVs sell a whole lot according to the chart. So if there's tariffs up to 50% on these vehicles, that means a vehicle that would have cost costed $50,000 here is going to go up $100,000 easy. While China will impose a new 5% levy on oil, there was no new tariff on liquefied natural gas. In Washington, the initial reaction from the White House was aimed at easing concerns about the fallout. The amount of money being tariffed is not material in terms of macro growth. Trump advisor Peter Navarro said on Fox Business Network, the retaliation will absolutely not slow growth, he said. China's announcement comes as leaders from the group of 7 nations prepare to meet in France and central bankers gather in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, to discuss issues such as the global slowdown. The Chinese announcement was foreshadowed by a tweet from Hui Jin, the editor-in-chief of the Global Times, a newspaper controlled by the ruling Communist Party. China promised earlier this week that any new tariffs from the U.S. would lead to escalation and retaliation. The U.S. said it will put 10% tariffs on $110 billion of Chinese goods starting September 1st, and the same levy on another $160 billion on December 15th, a staggered approach aimed at easing the impact on the American economy. So I'm not going to read this whole thing, but what's happening here is that the automotive industry is in the red states that support Trump, especially South Carolina. And if these tariffs go into place, they could decimate, especially at 50%, they can decimate the auto industry from selling, exporting any goods to China, because those factories are really dependent upon exportation just as much as they are domestic consumption. Domestic consumption is one thing, but what happens when your secondary market that really keeps the lights on has been impacted at 50%? That's like a hellfire missile being laser guided at your states that fully support your campaign. If you're Trump, how do you respond to something like that? All right, let me get to the next article. All right, this next one is from the Wall Street Journal. As everyone should probably know by now, David Koch, who used his wealth to reshape U.S. politics, dies at 79. This is sudden because it wasn't that long ago that David Koch and the Koch brothers was out there doing the two-step, supporting multiple campaigns. It's also been rumored that the Koch brothers had a hand in turning over turmoil in Venezuela. The Koch brothers are globalists. They only care about their own personal interests as billionaires, and thus they're willing to do whatever it takes to shape the geopolitical landscape by funding campaigns through the PACs that support these these political players in office. Hey, what's going on, DE Raptor? Shalom. Ghana Warrior checking for you. Yeah, some people say Koch, some people say Koch. It's either way. One of them is dead. So, all right, let me get to this next article. All right, this next one is from investing.com. U.S. new home sales. New home sales measuring the annualized number of new single-family homes that were sold during the previous month. The report tends to have more impact when it's released ahead of existing home sales because the reports are tightly correlated. A higher than expected reading should be taken as positive bullish for the USD, while a lower than expected reading should be taken as a negative bearish for the USD. So what we're looking at here is that as of August 23rd, 2019, the forecast was for 649,000, and the actual number is 635,000. The previous number of the same quarter was 728,000. So if you go back to July 24th, 2019, the actual number was 646K, and the forecast was for 660K, and the previous was 604K. Yeah, sorry, my mic dropped for whatever reason. Not sure what's going on. Yeah, so for March 29th, the actual numbers of 666K was higher than the forecast of 620K, with a previous of 636K. So from March, April, things were fairly well, and then from May all the way up to August, things just went downhill. I'm assuming that the recent trade wars, as well as the downward spiral in terms of job growth has contributed to this. So there's a lot of uncertainty in the market. DE, what's going on? DE, if you're trying to talk, I can't hear you. All right, let me get to this last article. Okay, DE dropped off. All right, this one is from RT.com. Dow Jones tanked 700 plus points as Trump trades barbs with Beijing and the Federal Reserve. The Dow Jones saw a steep drop of 700 points after a threat from Beijing to slap new tariffs on billions of dollars in American goods, in a harsh response from the U.S. President Donald Trump, but picked up before ending 621 down. The precipitous fall in the Dow on Friday came after China unveiled its response to Washington's latest tariffs, vowing to impose penalties on $75 billion in American products. President Trump responded in a volley of tweets slamming Beijing for underhanded trade practices and threatened to cut off all business ties with the country, sending markets to further panic. We don't need China, and frankly, we would be better off without them. The president tweeted, adding that American firms should start looking for an alternative to China. The president also singled out Federal Reserve Chairman Jay Powell, asking whether the chairman or the Chinese President Xi Jinping was a bigger enemy to the United States. President Trump and White House trade advisor Peter Navarro have blamed the Federal Reserve for sluggish growth, arguing that the institution has raised interest rates too far too fast. The president repeated that criticism on Friday. During times of recession, the Federal Reserve lowers interest rates to encourage borrowing and stimulate economic activity. However, holding rates too low risks the creation of a bubble of unsustainable growth. The Dow saw its worst tumble in a single day in 2019 last week, with an 800-point drop, reversing previous gains accrued after Washington indicated it would delay additional sanctions on Chinese goods from September to the end of the year. Beijing previously urged Washington to not make good on its tariff threats and to find a way to resolve the trade dispute, but also warned that it would retaliate to any new American levies. So China did this on purpose. They timed it correctly. They knew that just before the bell ends at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a Friday, that they were going to drop the hammer with the threat and disrupt the markets in the West. This is a strategic move by China. Just before the bell drops, or just before the market closes, they released this information. They had it pre-planned in advance. They went ahead with it and completely torpedoed the market in the West, leaving themselves unscathed, unaffected by this. Meanwhile, all of the Western companies, all of the global markets that are outside of China, sending them into a frenzy, especially with the announcement of a 50% tariff on American American auto manufactured vehicles. If you're China, this is a this was a uppercut. This is a definite uppercut. The United States hasn't been to war with a formidable power since 1945, or since World War II. They haven't been to war with a formidable power since then. What this means, and what I'm saying here, is that this trade war is an actual literal war. And they're hitting the United States exactly in all the right places where it hurts. They give the United States a bloody lip, a busted lip and a bloody nose, without ever setting foot on American soil, sending their markets into chaos, free fall, Dow Jones, 700-point dip, American goods levied at up to 50%. The housing market completely dominated by Chinese investment. Bonds dominated by Chinese investment. it's like playing Jenga on a three-legged stool. There's no way that the United States can sustain this going into 2020. No way. Especially with a looming recession over your head, there's no way that's going to happen. But we'll have to see what happens December 15th when the real tariffs kick in, because at that point, that can determine going into 2020 how this is going to play out for the future. Because if that's going to be the case, it could send the country into political chaos as well as economic free fall. We are not certified financial planners on here. If you want a certified financial planner, go to cfp.net. We do not give out financial advice on this channel, but for myself, I have no interest in buying a house in this market at all. I'm waiting until next year to buy a new car, or even if I want to. I mean, currently my car, nothing wrong with my car now, but I would like to get out of it into something more newer. But maybe it's not a good idea to do so. Yeah, I don't know. Checking for you based on the graphs, I would say that we're long overdue for a for a recession. But you know, I do agree that U.S. will fall into depression. But you know, it's tomato or tomato here. DE, what's going on?
Finally got my computer restarted, but I don't know what happened. It's just
Yeah.
froze.
Yeah.
I'm pretty good. How you doing, Mike?
I'm good, Shalom.
You know, man, those articles are hitting home.
Oh yeah.
Serious. Oh boy. And the thing is that even though a lot of Americans, the majority of Americans are not feeling it, the blowback from this trade war yet. The people who are, even the people who are shopping, you know, you're buying stuff that made in China or Southeast Asia, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
You're not feeling it yet. The price is not going up as fast as it should, because a lot of manufacturers and a lot of retailers stocked up before the price hikes really went into force, and they pushed Trump to delay some of the tariffs until after this. I think you're going to start finding out like January when the best person to deal with this subject of like Wall Street, what's happening on Wall Street, would be Dollar Whip, because he can see what's going on with the trends there, but he can explain it better. Me, a lot of people like Target reported really great earnings, but what they're one of the people who have these huge warehouses everywhere, like Amazon, and they stocked up before the tariffs went in. So while other people were pulling out their stock there in Walmart, while people were having this just-in-time delivery, we sell one TV, so we're going to order another one. They had warehouses where they were keeping the TVs there. They had already ordered 100,000, you know, and stored them all over the country, ready for this thing, because Trump had warned everybody about it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so now when they're reporting, their earnings are great, but the other stores now have to be looking for places to cut or close the stores. And Trump is really his ego at stake here, so he really can't back down, because his people, he already told the people he can do anything at all in the planet. You know what I'm saying? He already bragging all over the world that he can do anything and all. Nobody. He says, like when China just raised the last round of tariff, he said, you know what? It's not going to affect us. It's not going to affect us. We're going to see it next year, around January, when all the people go out and spend all their money on toys for Christmas. Guess what's going to happen in January? A lot of them are going to be out of work. That's what U.S. companies do. I see it even in the company that I work for. They will wait till just before Christmas and lay off people. So
U.S. Steel just did that.
they U.S. companies normally do things like that. Just after a big holiday or something like that, they lay off all the workers. So this thing, the average worker, say that work for BMW, they're selling cars in China. And one of those cars don't sell in China for 60,000 like they do in the US. They sell for 100,000 in China. So when you add on to that, the price of that car, BMW is making a ton of money off of that car. And when they raise the price in China, guess what? The worker in South Carolina gets squeezed. And the problem is China yet hasn't gone after the real culprits that really, they haven't gone after Caterpillar tractor.
John Deere.
They haven't gone after those guys yet. So, you know what I'm saying? Those are the people who, Boeing, Boeing makes big money. And if China started going after Boeing, that's China say, you know what? We're not buying another airplane from Boeing. We're going to buy an airplane from Airbus. Airbus going to build the airplane in China. Guess what's going to happen? Then a lot of people are going to lose.
Well, remember the news on the last few months is that China and Russia have been working on a commercial airline for the last 2 years, and it should go into place by summer of 2020. I think it takes its preliminary flights in December, preliminary testing in December. So, and if they're saying that by summer of 2020 or quarter 2 of 2020, that this plane could actually go into full production, then what you're talking about now is cutting Boeing completely out. Boeing can't survive without military contracts and commercial purchases. The 737, the grounding of the 737 is completely destroying their market. None of those planes can come off the ground. All of those airlines need to be compensated for the grounding, and there's no sign. And now they just found a new bug in the 787 Dreamliner.
I wouldn't say that's a new bug. It's always been there.
I'm saying it's a new revelation. I'm saying it's a new revelation for the public, right? Well, it's a new revelation for the public.
From what I'm learning, there are a few of them. And they really haven't really fixed the battery problem yet. They have delayed it by putting in the that's a quick fix. But the airplane uses so much power, so much electrical power, that the battery system on the airplane is not big enough for the airplane.
Right.
You need at least 4 batteries on that airplane, and batteries are weight. One of those batteries, 100 pounds, easy.
Yeah.
But you need to separate the systems, and the way that the airplane is built is really difficult to separate the systems immediately. I don't know how they're going to do it, but anyway, they still got a few other bugs on that airplane from what I'm hearing that they haven't worked out. But the 737, it really is another beast that I don't know how they got away with that. Somebody, the FAA, they had to pay off a lot of people. Well, I better not say it. But When from the time you throw that engine so far ahead of the wing
Mhm.
and so high above the wing, what you do is change the aerodynamics of the airplane. Nobody is talking about that. I don't know why this, I don't know why nobody's talking about that, but that's something that is not easily corrected by electronics. You know what I'm saying? You either have to go back and change the tail of the airplane, or you have to raise the landing gear and drop the engine back down because now you're pushing the wing into a position where the wing shouldn't be operating at.
Mhm.
You know, it's like you're trying to make that airplane into a supersonic airplane without swept back wings.
Right.
So it's gonna create a problem. But
Hey, what's going
you
on,
know,
Koch?
they are China is not really going after the people that um, you say that China is going to build China and Russia build the airplane, but they are building. They haven't got into service with the like
DE, you have a ringing in the background that's drowning your voice out. So you do something about that.
they 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 haven't got into airplanes like in the 200 seater and above. If when
Right.
they get into the market with 200 seaters and above, then it's going to be a problem because um, China can go to Africa and say, "Look, we got an airplane that you can use. You don't have to buy Boeing." Somebody call. They get back to
Right.
that subject at the end.
Yeah. Yeah. Complex. What's going on, man?
Hey, Mike, what's good, G?
I'm chilling, bro. What's going on?
Oh man, nothing much. You know, just this whole China thing, dude. I got to tell you that we were actually pushing to get an order in before September 1st for a whole bunch of Xiaomi electric scooter parts for this very reason, because the customer doesn't want to pay the increased price for this stuff
Right.
when when this new round of tariffs kicks in. So I can speak to this firsthand. I literally sent the invoice off Tuesday. So I'm letting them know, like, hey man, look, you got like a week. But and listen to what we actually are starting to really see the effects. I know for all the normal stuff like toys and all that kind of stuff, Trump disingenuously, talked about pushing this stuff. I mean, it's real weird how he kind of does this stuff, and it's really not him. He's kind of just the face for just U.S. economic policy advisors, as a whole. But just to kind of say, oh well, we pushed the tariffs off until, what was it, December 15th, I think it is. So
Oh
they
yeah.
figure by yeah, like I think they figure by then everybody should get the majority of their Christmas shopping done, and it's kind of like, damn, So there's no real fix to this. We haven't actually come to some sort of agreement or anything. You're just saying we're gonna put off the hit. You know what I mean? Until everybody gets their Christmas shopping done. But I think the most telling thing to really look at here, man, is how agriculture has been hit, because agriculture right now has been absorbing all the blows as far as the U.S. is concerned. That and the steel industry. That's where really, most people don't work in steel. I think a couple weeks ago, actually, you might have heard Paul and I talking about the steel industry a little bit, because I think he still works in it, and I had to, for a time I worked in the steel industry.
Yeah.
So you just had U.S. Steel lay off with all the tariffs. One of Trump's campaign promises was to we were going to get the steel industry. We were going to get the steel industry revived here in the United States, and I think there were subsidies thrown to a couple of steel companies in like Ohio or something like that, and the thing was that those companies they took the subsidies, but they got the factory
Complex, your mic is breaking up a
back
whole
up.
lot.
Kind of like a man, it is. I don't know why I'm on my laptop too. How do I sound now?
It sounds okay now.
Okay, might have been just been on my shirt. You know,
But
so they knew that they.
again.
Damn, dude. All right, hold on.
You might have to close out some applications in the back. But yeah, to your point, agricultural industry has taken all the blows, man. They got bum rushed. There was no response for it either. The soybean tariffs are supposed to go kick in September 1st. So Trump was blindsided by this, and they waited just before 4 o'clock, when the market closes, to actually make this announcement, which sent the Dow 700 points plunged just before the market closes, which sent the whole entire market into chaos. And Trump only response is to tweet something back, because he has no recourse on this. He has no real recourse. I mean, he could he can't he can't levy any tariffs against those goods, because then that would send the U.S. economy into chaos, because people won't go out and buy anything. I said this months ago, that you're going to see 55-inch TVs. I already seen the projected numbers, and I've seen them in the stores. You can get a 55-inch for $300. You're going to start seeing those suckers at $700, $800. You won't even get a 65 or a 70-inch TV, or these new 82-inch TV, 85 inches. You won't see those, because they'll be so far out of the market, it'd be ridiculous to buy them.
Yeah.
PS4 and Xbox and stuff like that. That stuff is going to be heavily impacted.
Yeah, I was gonna say, man, brick and mortar. Oh my God, dude, the brick and mortar sector. Oh man, like kiss that shit goodbye. You know, out of the U.S. retail sector, Amazon will be the winner, because nobody's gonna go walk into a Best Buy and spend that kind of money that you just said on a TV. Not happening. You know what I mean?
No point. Yeah,
so man, brick and mortar retail is gonna feel it. But to get back to the agriculture piece, they had so there was like another round of subsidies that Trump had just issued out to the agriculture sector. And I was watching a couple of news clips where see, people hear that and then they just say, oh, okay, well, we're taking care of the agriculture sector. Man, you got to understand something. Like, the way they disperse these subsidies, right? The bigger your farming operation, the more the money you get. You see, so your family farms and stuff like that in the Midwest, man, look, out of that 60 billion, I heard like some of them got like $5,000.
A lot of that money went to your wealthy. We covered an article about this, I think, the other day.
Yep.
So, I think I was on Geopolitics, or maybe on another day. But those farm subsidies and bailouts went to wealthy people who had golf courses.
Yeah, you're not. That's the other thing. You're not hearing from the farmers. A lot of farmers, they done flipped on Trump. They flipped big time. They're not voting for him. All these farmers that voted for him, they have buyer's remorse now, because they're like, look, you think these subsidies have helped me in any way?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're not, like, they're like this. Look, we're not gonna get that business back.
Mm-hmm.
They said that those types of relationships take years to form.
Mm-hmm.
When you're talking about agriculture futures and all that type of stuff, look, man, investors are gonna buy in on future crops and stuff based on projected business. You see, so there's a multitude of ways where farmers are looking at the situation and they're like, dude, this subsidy means nothing to me, especially since I run a small farm. You're gonna go give these big agra, a bulk of the subsidies, and my small farm where I grow, dates and melons and stuff like that on maybe like, 30, 40 acres or something, you giving me like 15 grand, 20 grand.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's not going to help. the business is gone. You gave me this little piddly $15,000 subsidy. You know, like basically it's equivalent of hush money.
There's probably some stipulations in there that says you're not allowed to speak about this to the media.
Yeah.
And so that's why you don't hear from these farmers.
That's why you're not hearing it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I said earlier, and I've said it time before on these panels, that I think the way China gets around all of this is they ship a lot of these stuff, a lot of these goods to Africa. Africa puts their stamp on it, and then they ship it to the United States, and then they continue the process.
Bro.
Africa wins. Africa
Yeah.
wins, and China still wins, while the United States still has to absorb all this, because the United States does not have a manufacturing base for these electronics at all.
We got rid of that. We got rid of them.
Yeah, Trump is telling these companies, oh, well, you should find other places to manufacture your goods. Well,
where the hell are you gonna do that?
Where are you gonna go? Outside of Southeast Asia is already filled to the max on manufacturing capacity for the next 2 years.
Wait, didn't you cover something a couple of weeks ago where we're talking about all these big name companies that are pivoting now to try to get in Vietnam and in these other places in Southeast Asia, while the capacity was still there for them to do so? I think it was companies like New Balance and a few others. We're talking about they're angling right now to try to get their manufacturing bases over in those places, because it's a wrap. And what you were just saying, basically, we're gonna redirect.
You're borging a lot, complex. You're borging a lot. Nobody can understand you.
Good.
No one can understand you, complex.
Right, one of
you're borging so much.
Okay,
no one can understand.
Let me try to move closer. I'm gonna try to move closer to the Wi-Fi. Hold on.
What you might want to do is fix the antenna on the router itself.
Okay, do I sound okay now?
It's a little bit better. It's legible.
Still boring.
Yeah,
okay.
You're still borging.
I was just saying, man. Like, okay, all right.
Yeah, while he fixes his connection issues, how this benefits Africa, and I know some people are going to say, oh, how does this benefit? How does trade war benefit Black people, melanated people? If they set this manufacturing capacity in Africa that is widely available, China has been planning for this for a long time. If you go back on a Black Brain Trust, so like a year or so ago, we covered articles where China is building manufacturing facilities on the Sinai because there's so much vast land in the Sinai that is untapped and is close to water. So all thing they have to do is pump the water in from the Red Sea in the Suez, and then the electricity aspect is easy because they can pump the electricity from Egypt itself, from Cairo. They have a lot of untapped capacity there, so they can build dozens of factories inside Africa right now.
Hey,
and
Mike, do I sound okay now, Mike?
Yeah, you sound better. So
okay, go ahead.
What's happening here is that China has procured some manufacturing facilities on the continent just for this very purpose. One was the primary to ship quicker to Europe. So you're talking a 24-hour turnaround rather than the 3-week turnaround that it would take to ship from China through the Indian Ocean all the way up through the canal, to the Red Sea, and up to the Mediterranean, up to Southern Europe. Now you're talking about manufacturing right in North Africa and shipping that sucker right across the water in the matter of I think it's only a 4-hour sail from Egypt up to Greece, up to Italy. So now you're talking about almost same-day delivery on goods.
And you got to understand too. remember Italy signed its own deal with China just what, 2 months ago?
Yeah.
Okay, so Italy is setting themselves up to be the receiver of those goods coming from Africa. That's number one. Number two, when we talked, I spoke about the Ethiopian consulate and them inviting black businesses to come and do business in Ethiopia. They're saying, look, we got a whole bunch of electronics assembly operations over there with highly skilled Africans ready to put together electronics and stuff like that.
Yep. Yep. And a lot of those goods in West Africa, because Nigeria has a lot of energy capacity. Despite all of their flaws, they still have a lot of energy capacity on the western part of Africa, where they can make and stamp a lot of those goods. So a lot of the smaller goods like leggings and shoes and things like that could be manufactured there. But all your heavy electronics, your flat screen TVs, your computers and stuff like that, they can stamp those suckers over for U.S. Export or for U.S. import and be across the water in a matter of 24 hours. Whereas coming from China across the Pacific to California ports, is a 2-week rendezvous. That's not something that anyone's taken into consideration. And now, because of AGOA, not ADOS, which is African Growth and Opportunity Act, that the United States had already signed into place under Trump again, 0% tariffs on African exports to the United States. This opens up a whole new paradigm. This opens up a whole new paradigm. And it's not just, the AGOA isn't even just for Africa, it's actually for the Caribbean too. So Caribbean goods can now be exported to the United States at 0% tariff. You think China's not going to take advantage of that by sending goods into Jamaica, the strong relationship that they have with Jamaica? They can export goods from Jamaica, clothing and things like that. Just put a Jamaican stamp on there, made in Kingston, ship it out to Florida in a matter of hours.
I mean, dude, wow.
Yeah, China has this in their favor, because the U.S. doesn't have a response or any recourse for those tariffs. So yeah, you don't buy any Chinese electronics. Where are you going to get it from now? Europe? You think Europe's going to send you the same electronic goods at the same rate that the Chinese were selling it for? I don't think so. You don't have the contingencies in place.
Well, I think the U.S. contingencies is to foment discontent and and back protests, in financial hubs like Hong Kong, and arm Taiwan up. That's their recourse to that. But I don't see how your average U.S. business or agricultural operation benefits from any of that.
No. What they should have done is they should have created subsidies, for these urban farms in these predominantly black and brown neighborhoods, and that would have boosted his rating in some of these blue states. He could have carried over in case the red states were to fall for him. Could have, because he's going to need those states to carry him over. Now that the farming states or the manufacturing states in the United States don't actually cover him going in for the next election, he's going to need all the capacity he can get from both sides. And unfortunately, he has not made any sort of innovative political ideas for that area. Now, I'm not putting all this on him, because I don't think he's that. He doesn't have.
It's not him. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think he has the intellectual capacity to even think about that. I think ADOS or hashtags, or whatever you want to call it, call these people now, are low priority because they're not organized anyways. But that's a whole nother subject. DE, you're trying to say something?
Yeah. there are three things. One, the Europeans really don't manufacture electronic equipment in the scale that they used to.
Yep.
Philips, AZ, for instance, their stuff is made in China too.
Mhm.
So they really can't make things and send it to the US unless they start building factories to export it to the US. The other thing is that you're talking about China manufacturing goods in other nations, and that's what Belt and Road is for. Not only to get goods to China, but to start manufacturing goods in other locations, because China's 20 years down the road, Chinese workers, they're going to be aging. And the second thing is that they're going to be getting paid more. So what you get is more parity in wages across the landscape. You're getting Chinese manufacturing moving to places where outside Asia, that they're within Asia right now. You might say that it's made in the Philippines, but a Chinese factory was built in the Philippines to manufacture this thing. To ship it is say for like let's say Apple phone. You know, it's made in the parts for it's made about 5 different places, and then it's assembled in China, and then shipped to the U.S. And they say it's made in China, but the majority of parts is made outside China by Chinese factories. And the other thing is when you got Chinese goods being made in places where they weren't made before, is that you have a world market. It's something like what the British used to do a long time ago. When they had the Commonwealth, stuff was made they used to get stuff from everywhere. Everything used to come to England. And all the raw materials will come to England. They make it and ship it to everywhere in the world. And that's what China is. But the other thing that he's just talking about is here in the US. And that if you watch what's happening, you see a lot of young black people are talking about how they are conservative and they're voting Republican. And you are seeing a situation where the black vote is being divided up and nullified. And you only got the Hispanic vote, the Jewish vote, and the so-called red blue states, Caucasian vote.
Mhm.
And the black vote used to be the swing vote in the country. Now it's not going to be. You know, I hear people are going to complain about what I say. They're going to say, you know, all kind of foolish things, but that's what I'm seeing.
Wait. Do I mean DE? Trump literally just shamed Jews.
Look,
Like he literally just like if you want to know like how desperate, like when get critical of the Jew, when has anyone ever been critical of the Jewish vote like that? Like
well,
that's how you know you're fishing for votes right about now when you're sitting there trying to shame Jews who largely vote Democrat. I don't know if people know that Jews largely vote Democrat too. When you're trying to shame them into voting Republican.
Well, because
saying, you know, basically telling them that look, it's not. Go ahead, Mike.
no,
well,
I was just going to say.
Go ahead, Mike.
No, I was just going to say that this is largely due to the fact that he supports Israel, and now he's pushing back and saying, "Well, I supported you guys. Where's your support for me?"
Exactly.
He's right. He's right. But DE brought up a point about the Chinese building facilities in the Philippines and all these other places. They've done the same thing in Haiti. This is a major issue because a lot of the leggings that you see all these, these girls wearing in the streets, with leopard prints and all types of designs on them. A lot of those leggings are actually made inside Haiti, where people are getting paid. Haitians are getting paid 10 cents, 20 cents on the dollar to make, and it says made in China, but in reality, it was made in Haiti. And Haitians are not getting compensated in the way that they should, because the labor laws are not effective in those areas. And because of that, you get cheap leggings at places like Rainbows and Fashion Nova and these other places. And no one is taking into consideration the exploitation of labor in Haiti. And with that being said, they can make this stuff and ship it from anywhere, and no one would know where it's coming from. That's why I brought up the African piece. But it's good that DE brought up that point about the old Commonwealth of British States, because you're seeing it happen right now in Haiti. And that's why I brought up before that China, the Belt and Road Initiative that DE pointed out earlier, that's exactly what I was talking about, that this is part of that whole entire process. Now, the Northern Sea and the Barents Sea, the ice caps are actually melting in these areas to a point where, although they're talking about climate change and how it's going to affect climate change, in reality, it's actually helping Russia, because now that opens up a trade route for them that was never there before.
Look, that's why Trump is trying to for shipping routes. To buy Greenland, so that
your mic is breaking up.
These routes. Damn, dude. Okay.
You might want to boost the power on your Wi-Fi from low to medium to high. Yeah, the Greenland piece is good. Good that you brought that up, because there's a lot of natural resources in Greenland that the U.S. doesn't have access to. There's a lot up there. Even from an IT standpoint, Greenland would be perfect for putting data centers up there, because you don't have to spend a whole lot on cooling, because it's already cold. So the only thing they have to do is point it in the direction of the jet stream, and what that does is it cools the computers down, and they don't have to spend any money, because they already have thermal power coming in to power up the computers. But to cool it down, they would need very little. And they can run those suckers at max capacity at full throttle, 100% all the time, because that jet stream will flow right into the data center, cool it down, and then take off. And you would never know. The computers won't know the difference between being in the United States or being in Greenland, because it's the temperature.
Hey, okay. Am I okay now?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, that's the reason why a whole bunch of crypto mining operations moved to places like Finland and stuff. Mm-hmm. Like all these crypto mining operations that were selling rack space, man, they were doing deals with the Nordic countries up there for the very reason you just said, my energy consumption. You can run all these miners, and the consumption to keep them, the power consumption to keep them cool is a lot less in places where it's already cold.
Mm-hmm.
Russia's got another a card in the deck that they haven't played yet. I'm not sure if they'll be able to play it, because before it used to be the cold. Russia's covered in ice most of the year. And the second problem they have is the people. They don't have enough people to for the landmass that they have. Russia need at least 700 million people, double the population that they have now. But the resources that Russia has underground, the only other place you can find those kind of resources is at the South Pole and in Africa. Those are only two places. And that's because people can't get underneath the South Pole at the landmass. And in Africa, it is locked in by infrastructure. But Russia, if the ice melts in Russia, they have is like natural gas right now. Natural gas and oil are the first two things that come to mind, but also other minerals that have not been tapped in Russia, period.
Well, that's a good point because they discovered gas at the North Pole on Russia's side, and Russia controls 90% of the North Pole. Canada has Canada has like the other 10%, and that 10% is not viable for any sort of exploitation. And even the United States is bullying Canada to get up there, and Canadians are telling them go screw, eh? But yeah, this is we covered an article a few weeks ago that Putin was talking about in an interview his his African strategy, and the idea here is that Russian universities seat capacity is almost empty. Not enough Russian students, the population to go into school because a lot of them went to Western Europe to find work, but their seating capacity is empty. So the idea here is to give free education to Africans to learn in Russia and to study the Russian language and send them back into Africa with Russian teachings in nuclear development, rocket development, aerospace and space exploration, mining, as well as information technologies specifically. So now Russia has played a strong hand in Africa that the United States completely dropped the ball on. I mean, yeah, you have a lot of Africans here from Nigeria and other western parts of Africa, but they are not included into the political process of the United States in the way that they would be in other places. When Obama was elected into office in 2008, Russia also had their own political African in office as well. The first time that they ever had one. I think he's like the mayor, not the mayor of Moscow. He was like the mayor of another city neighboring Moscow. I have to look that up because that guy is being groomed to be, probably like the foreign ambassador to Africa at some point. So now that creates a new political dimension for, Eurasia and Africa. And all of this is going to play into, into the downfall of the United States' position, because they did not set up the proper contingencies for political discourse with the continent. Trump hasn't visited the Caribbean not once since he's been in office. He's completely neglected Africa. He hasn't been to Africa at all. He sent Rex Tillerson over there. And he sent his daughter over there. Not his daughter. The wife over there. But nothing else has come from that.
Hey, Mike, I just posted an article there, U.S. African trade lagging despite free access. So even though you have the AGOA on the books, we ain't making no deals there. Everybody else is active right now.
Well, remember that they made, remember that big problem that they had where Mike brought it up, but the insurance fraud, where this company went in and that's the kind of deal that they were setting up. The people who set up that whole Africa business thing, that's what they were planning to do. They weren't planning on really doing anything big that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, they were
getting money out of Africa. They're planning on getting money out of the U.S. government in the name of doing business in Africa without doing business in Africa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to put a footprint there, but not actually leave anything of substance.
Right.
Which actually destroys their reputation, because then they're only known for half-baked half-baked objectives being unfulfilled.
Well, they always done that, but nobody was looking at it before. It's only now that people are seeing, hey, China is building this. What are you doing? And people are looking at, not only looking at what they're doing, but going back into the past and look at what they did. And people are saying, well, you haven't done anything, and you're not doing anything. All you're doing is complaining about China. You know what I'm saying? So that's where the problem's going to come in. And they haven't even started to deal with what they did in the past and come out and say, you know what? Yeah, we went in the past. They come back and say, like, we admit what we did in the past. We didn't do it much. So now let's work together to do something better. Here's a plan that we have. Come and do this with us. They're not even doing that.
Well, I've said this in the past that, you know, Black Americans kind of dropped the ball on this as well in terms of how they deal with the continent. From a foreign policy initiative, the most softest of policy could have been exporting building HBCUs in on the continent. Historically, Black colleges and universities, they should have had one in every single country in sub-Saharan Africa. There's 100 HBCUs in this country. They could have set up online learning with the continent in the sub-Saharan Africa regions for Africans to actually benefit, and that would have gave leverage under the Obama administration to Africa rather than to just pay lip service to them. They could have actually done some early initiatives that would have played a stronger role going into the Trump administration so that they would actually capitalize off of it later. But nothing was ever done. Nothing was done. I mean, he went over there, he talked about same-sex marriage, you know, women's rights and things like that, things that did not really affect Africa at all. I mean, in fact, Africa had more women in power than the United States has ever had in their lifetime. So even after colonialism, which is only the last 30 or 40 years, the United States has been a nation for the last 250 years, and they still have not had any sort of these, gender equality that they want to push on everybody else. They didn't have it here.
This subject is one that kind of like I'm timid to talk about because it can stir a lot of problems. You know, it can get people in a lot of argument.
In terms of what I was saying?
Yeah. Well, look, if you go back to say, I don't know, let's go back to Liberia when it was created, right? And you see African Americans being involved in the continent. And you got up to Garvey, Malcolm X, you know, and Africans were coming to America, people from the Caribbean were coming to America, and they were leaving here with the Africa-centric, how would I put it? It's like they were coming here and learning politics, going back home and saying, look, we got to work with the Black Americans, we got to work with Black Brazilians, and we got to work to create an African-centric point. We got to stand up for Africa as one people. That has kind of died. What we have now is just people talk about what happened in the past. Everybody talks about what happened in the past. Everybody talks about, well, we were talking about Africa. We were involved in the pan-African movement. We were. And nobody is like the conversation between Africa and America and Europe Africans from America, from Europe, from Caribbean, from Brazil, is like almost the conversation from America stopped. From the rest of the world, it didn't stop. But from the conversation from the American side, stopped. And now what happened is that the Africans start coming to America and you get this antagonism started being built between Africans in America and Africans from the continent. And that has been, I think that's been a deliberate action by the US government to create that divide. And it's continuing instead of, even though they had the opportunity now to talk, because you got Africans living here, even though you have the opportunity now to talk, like you got African, say like the president of Ghana, Kenya, next comes Tanzania. Well, they're all coming. They're all coming, you know. Nobody's talking to them. They're going to the Caribbean. They say, hey, talk to us. This is what we want. This is our plan. And, you know, this is what we want to do. They've been going to Europe for a while, but they're not coming to America. And when they do come to America, they go to New York, you know. They don't go to the South like they used to the universities. The Africans used to go to the university because the university is where this pan-Africanism used to be taught. And you're saying that we should be building these institutions in Africa, and whereas before they were doing it across the ocean, across the pond, as they call it, they used to be talking to each other. Now they don't talk to each other in the way that they should. It's all antagonism. Well, why should I go to Africa? The younger generation says, well, why should I go to Africa? I don't have anything in Africa.
Yeah, I see that a lot. I see that a lot, even in the management.
And the Africans are coming here and say, look, you know what? Americans don't like us, so not all Africans. You know what I'm saying? This is not all in, all out thing. But you got the antagonism there, and it's at such a level that it's keeping a lot of the conversation from happening. And anytime somebody brings up the conversation, somebody jumps on you from the other side. Somebody will jump in and say, well, you know what? I don't like Africans because they did this to me. Well, holy crap. When I came from Barbados, you know, things happened to me here too. But, you know, me, I'm living in America. I can't continue to hold on to that, because otherwise, what are you going to do? Hate my own black people? I mean, come on, we already got enough.
You know, become a scallywag.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, if the guy I'm living next to, I hate him. When some Caucasian come into the neighborhood and start beating him up, if I allow it to happen, guess what's going to happen to me next? I'm the one who's going to come get next. So I got to help him. I got to forget about from the antagonism that we had, you know, the argument we had yesterday. I got to forget about that and say, you know what? This idiot's going to come. If he's come to his house today, this idiot's going to come back to my house tomorrow. So I got to help my neighbor. So that's the thing that we have to do. We're not doing it. You know, instead of me going on with this big stupid argument about what Africans did to me and what I did to the Africans, say what you did to me and all. And it's only, if it happens 10% of the time, that 10% is so loud that it seems that the whole thing is, that the whole, you know, there's a war going on. And that's keeping us apart. We should be, there should be some kind of organization set up like they had back in the 70s, where not only the leaders involved, but the younger generation. You go visit, like my kids, I send them to Africa. If you see Africans come here, they send their kids home for the summer vacation. You know, you go home to the village, bro. And that's what should happen. You make a friend. You're African, and you make a friend in school. Take your friend with you to Africa. Let him see how the village is. You know, let's see how life is in Africa. You know what I'm saying? That's the kind of exchange that we need, and it's not happening. Yep, and it's not happening.
Yeah, well, my initial comment was about what the HBCUs could do, right? HBCUs have a lot of political power through the academy, and my point was that because they were failing due to lack of enrollment and other reasons of resources, they could have embedded themselves into West African and South African countries, one university at a time. You need all 100 HBCUs to be on the continent. You needed the most the most prolific ones to be on the continent, to to create that sort of cohesion between the academy and the culture. And that way you can build a stronger political relationship through those ties, through the teachings of that, which would then open up a more global dialogue that was not, that was, like you said, was happening in the 70s, but now in the 2000s and the late 2000s, it's not happening, right? So this needs to take place before you can. That's what Israel has University of Tel Aviv in China. This is happening right now. You would think that this would never happen, but this is actually happening. Israel understands that in order for them to have outreach outside of the Middle East, they have to start with education. So now they allow people to come to Israel and get a free education in Israel. As long as you learn, if you want to learn Hebrew or something like that, you can actually do that. So they understand the necessity behind this, but I don't think that African Americans understand the necessity behind this and how things really work. Anything in a lot of your PWIs, which is your predominantly white institutions, are in other countries too, especially in the Middle East. You have Carnegie Mellon inside. I want to say it's the UAE. You have many of these Division I, Division II schools out in the Middle East. So when I look at this, I say, well, how come HBCUs didn't do the same thing to Africa and do it to the Caribbean? There should be a Morehouse College inside Ghana, or inside
Nigeria.
It's inside Nigeria, inside Jamaica. It should be this should have that there, but it doesn't seem like that was a part of a foreign or by who want to push a.
One of the things that I don't know if you know about it, you didn't mention it, is that one of the things that they were talking about when the president of Kenya, and the president of Ghana came to the Caribbean, sending students from Africa to UE, University of West Indies. And right now there are Nigerian students in Barbados going to UE.
Mm-hmm.
And those students, like you were talking about HBCUs, if HBCUs were holding up their hand to these people, they will be going to the US instead of going to the Caribbean.
Mm-hmm. And vice versa.
So now you're going to have students from the Caribbean going to Africa,
Mm-hmm.
and students from Africa going to University of West Indies.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like
so that way
go ahead, Mike.
No, I was just gonna say, and that's how you cultivate the next generation. You can't to break cultural.
Hey, Mike, you're breaking up now, man.
I'm breaking up.
Yeah.
Am I breaking up to you as well?
Yeah.
So my phone's sitting on top of the router, so let's see.
Yeah, but the opportunities are there. And if you got the president, if the president have to come from Ghana to Caribbean to say, hey, this is what I want to happen, then it means that it's gotten to a point where this is something that should happen at a low level between universities, not at the top. The president shouldn't have to come and say, do this. The university should be the ones, the president of the university should be one talking to the University of Ghana, University of Nigeria, University of South Africa. They should be talking directly about this situation.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what used to happen before. It's not happening now.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, that's this should end it on a good note, at least. Thank you all for joining us. Please hit the like button if you have not already done so. Share the video if possible. Hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust, including those on the community tab. And also, as an update, we do have Black Tech Talk happen tomorrow. This should happen about 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So make sure you join us for that. And actually, we're going to come back in the next 5 minutes for Black Car Talk.
Okay, everybody, have a good night. Thanks for stopping in.
All right, Shalom D.
All right, shalom.
Peace.